The first thing I noticed was that her sink wasn't broken. The second thing I noticed was that Ava Whitaker was wearing an oversized charcoal sweater, bare feet, and an expression that looked a little too calm for a woman who had texted me at 10:42 on a rainy Thursday night with, "Can you come over?" It's kind of an emergency. I was 27, old enough to know that when your ex-girlfriend's younger sister asks you to fix something after dark, the smartest answer is probably no. Unfortunately, I had never been famous for doing the smart thing when someone sounded lonely. My name is Ethan Brooks. I run a small home repair business in Portland, which means half my life is leaky faucets, crooked shelves, and people saying, "It should only take 5 minutes," right before I discover a plumbing disaster from 1986. Ava's apartment was on the third floor of an old brick building near Hawthorne, the kind with narrow staircases and radiators that clanked like ghosts with opinions. I'd been there once before, 2 years ago, back when I was dating her sister, Natalie, and Ava had answered the door with paint on her cheek and a paperback tucked under one arm. I remembered thinking she was pretty, then immediately feeling guilty for noticing. Back then, Ava had been 23, sharp-eyed, funny in a dry way, and mostly off limits by every moral and practical rule a man should follow. Natalie and I broke up 6 months later in the kind of quiet, exhausted way that doesn't make for dramatic stories. No cheating, no screaming. Just two people realizing we were better at making plans than keeping them. Still, after the breakup, the Whitaker family became a house I didn't walk past. Until Ava's text. When she opened the door that night, rainwater still dripping from my jacket, she glanced at my toolbox and said, "You came prepared. You said emergency." I did. I looked past her into the kitchen. "Is water pouring through the ceiling?" "No." "Is the sink spraying like a fountain?" "Not currently." "Is there a raccoon in the garbage disposal?" Her mouth twitched. "Not since Tuesday." I should have left right there. I should have said, "Glad you're alive, call a licensed raccoon specialist," and gone home. Instead, I stepped inside. Her place looked exactly like I would have expected and nothing like Natalie's. Natalie had loved white furniture, glass tables, and throw pillows no human body was ever meant to use. Ava's apartment had mismatched bookshelves, warm lamps, a navy rug, a little lemon tree by the window, and mugs in the sink like evidence of a person who actually lived there. There was music playing low from somewhere. Something old and soft. Etta James, maybe. Ava closed the door behind me, and for 1 second the hallway noise disappeared. It was just rain against windows, the smell of coffee, and her standing close enough that I could see the tiny gold flecks in her brown eyes. That was the exact moment I realized I had made a mistake. Not because I didn't want to be there, because I did. "Kitchen?" I asked, because grown men survive dangerous thoughts by discussing plumbing. "This way." She led me in, and I followed, like a man pretending not to notice the curve of her shoulder under that sweater. The kitchen was small, clean in the way people clean when they're anxious, except for the cabinet under the sink, which was wide open. I crouched down, pulled out my flashlight, and examined the pipes. Nothing. No leak, no corrosion, no loose coupling, not even a suspicious drip. I sat back on my heels and looked up at her. "Ava." She leaned against the counter, arms folded. "Ethan, your sink is fine." "I know." The rain tapped harder against the glass. I stared at her. "You know?" She looked down at her hands, then back at me with a bravery that made the room feel smaller. "Stay," she said quietly. "I've been waiting for an excuse." For a moment, I forgot how to breathe like a normal citizen. The sentence didn't land like flirtation. Not exactly. It landed like something she had carried too long and finally set down between us. I stood slowly, wiping my hands on a rag even though they weren't dirty. "Ava, you can't say things like that to me." Her eyebrows lifted. "Why not?" "Because you're Natalie's sister." "I've been aware." "And because it's late." "I own a clock." "And because if you're lonely tonight, I don't want to be the guy who mistakes that for something else." That changed her face, not badly, softly. She looked at me for a long moment, and then her defenses slipped just enough for me to see the woman under the jokes. "I didn't text you because I was lonely," she said. "I texted you because every time something breaks in this apartment, I think of you first, which is inconvenient because nothing ever breaks when I need it to. A laugh escaped me before I could stop it. She smiled then, small and nervous, and it hit me with ridiculous force. I had spent the last year and a half convincing myself Ava Whitaker belonged in the category of people I shouldn't think about. Apparently, my mind had obeyed just enough to make my body unprepared for standing in her kitchen, while she admitted she'd wanted me there. You could have just asked me to coffee, I said. I thought about it. And? And asking my sister's ex to coffee felt messy. But faking a sink emergency felt clean? She pointed at the cabinet. Technically, there's plumbing involved. I laughed again, and some of the tension broke, but not all of it. The rest stayed there, alive and humming. She turned to the coffee maker. Do you want some? I made too much. At 11 at night? I was either going to drink coffee or lose my nerve. That's a terrible health plan. I didn't ask my handyman for medical advice. Handyman? She glanced over her shoulder. Would you prefer emotionally complicated repairman? Actually, yes. Put that on my business cards. She poured 2 mugs, and when she handed one to me, our fingers touched. It wasn't dramatic. No thunder, no music swell. Just her skin brushing mine and both of us pausing like the entire apartment had tilted half an inch. She noticed. So did I. I took the mug and looked away first because I was trying very hard to remain the kind of man my mother would not be disappointed in. Ava lifted her cup to her lips. For what it's worth, Natalie knows I texted you. That snapped my attention back. She knows. Ava nodded once. She's the one who told me to stop being a coward. I stared at her. Your sister told you to call me? She said, and I quote, if you're still bringing up Ethan every time someone mentions decent men, maybe embarrass yourself already. I didn't know what to do with that. Natalie had always been direct, but this was a level of generosity I hadn't expected. Still, old guilt rose fast. Ava, I don't want to hurt anyone. You didn't hurt Natalie, she said. You two ended because you were wrong for each other. She told me that before I ever admitted anything. Admitted what? Ava looked at me over the rim of her mug. There was the cliff. There was the line. And I was standing right at the edge, holding coffee in a kitchen where the sink worked perfectly. She set her mug down. That I used to hope you'd notice me, she said. And tonight I got tired of pretending I'd stopped. I had repaired burst pipes in freezing crawl spaces. I had wrestled a dead water heater down 2 flights of stairs. I had once removed an entire family of squirrels from a woman's attic while she stood below me praying in Spanish. None of that had prepared me for Ava Whitaker saying she used to hope I'd notice her. Because the truth was, I had. Not in a way I ever let myself keep. Not in a way I fed or named. But I had noticed the paint on her cheek. The way she made a joke without waiting for permission. The way she listened like people's small confessions mattered. I had noticed, then buried it under good intentions. Ava watched me now, standing in her kitchen like she was trying to be brave and not bolt at the same time. Say something, she said. I put my coffee down carefully. I did notice you. Her lips parted. I rubbed the back of my neck. I hated myself for it a little. That's romantic. It wasn't supposed to be. No, she said softly. I guess not. I took one step closer, not enough to crowd her, enough that she had to tilt her head to keep my eyes. When I was with Natalie, I never crossed that line, I said. I know. But noticing you, yeah, I did that, more than once. The honesty sat between us, warm and dangerous. Ava breathed out, and her shoulders lowered, like she'd been holding up a weight for years and finally set it on the floor. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Okay, I'm not insane. A laugh broke out of me. That was your standard? It was my first goal? Rain slid down the dark kitchen window. Her apartment smelled like coffee and old wood and whatever soap she used, something clean with orange in it. I could have stood there all night, learning the space between her breaths. Instead, my phone buzzed. We both looked at it on the counter. I glanced at the screen. Natalie. Ava saw the name upside down and made a tiny sound. Well, that's biblical timing, I answered before I could overthink it. Hey, are you at Ava's? Natalie asked. No hello, no warm-up. Classic Natalie. Yes. Good. Is her sink actually broken? I looked at Ava. She pressed both hands over her face. No, I said. Natalie sighed. She panicked, didn't she? She improvised. That tracks. A pause. Then her voice softened. Ethan, I meant what I told her. I'm not upset. I walked a few feet away, though in Ava's kitchen, privacy was mostly symbolic. You're sure? Very. You and I were a good idea on paper. That was the problem. Ava doesn't do paper. She does feelings at inconvenient volume. Ava called, I can hear you. Good, Natalie said. Then hear this. Don't make it weird by acting noble until everyone's miserable. I pinched the bridge of my nose as this family is aggressive. We're efficient. Also, if you hurt her, I'll become inefficient in court. You're not a lawyer. I'll study. The call ended. I set the phone down and turned back to Ava, who was staring at the floor with pink cheeks. I'm going to move to another country, she said. Seems expensive. I'll fake a passport emergency. Technically, there's government paperwork involved. She looked up and we both laughed. Quiet at first, then helplessly. It loosened something. The guilt didn't vanish, but it stopped sitting on my chest with both knees. When the laughter faded, Ava picked at the sleeve of her sweater. I didn't want her to call you. I wanted her blessing, not her project management. I'm glad she did. You are. Yeah. I leaned back against the counter. Because I was about 10 seconds from giving a speech about responsibility and leaving. Her face fell before she could hide it. So I closed the distance. Ava, I said gentler. I don't want to leave. She looked up at me then, and there it was. The naked hope of someone who had made the first move and was waiting to see if the ground would hold. I chose her in that moment. Not because Natalie approved, not because it was raining or late or easy to confuse adrenaline for romance. Because Ava Whitaker was standing in front of me asking to be seen, and I wanted to see all of her. I want to take you out, I said. Her mouth curved. Like on a date? No, like to a municipal planning meeting. I'd still wear lipstick. That image did unfortunate things to my pulse. A date, I confirmed. A real one. Dinner. No fake plumbing. She considered me with theatrical seriousness. Could there be real dessert? If things go well. If things go well, she stepped closer. Ethan, I fabricated a home maintenance crisis to get you into my apartment. I think we're past coy. You make a fair point. I usually do. I smiled. Tomorrow night? Something flickered in her eyes. Pleasure? Nerves? Relief? Yes. The word was simple, but it felt like a door opening. Then she reached for my hand. Not my arm, not the sleeve of my jacket, my hand. Her fingers slid into mine warm and sure, and every sensible thought I had spent years collecting scattered like screws across a floor. I want to be clear about something, she said. Okay. I don't want to be a secret. You won't be. And I don't want to be treated like some terrible mistake you're barely allowing yourself. The words landed cleanly. She wasn't pleading. She was setting a boundary, and somehow that made me want her more. I squeezed her hand. You're not a mistake. Her gaze searched mine. So I said the truest thing I had. You're the first thing in a long time that feels like I should be careful because it matters, not because I'm ashamed. Her eyes went glossy. Damn it, she murmured. That was annoyingly good. I do what I can. She laughed, but it trembled at the edges. I lifted my free hand slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. My fingertips brushed a loose strand of hair from her cheek, and the small intimacy of it hit harder than it should have. Ava went still. The kitchen shrank around us. Rain, coffee, her hand in mine. Her breath caught when my thumb skimmed the curve of her cheek. I should go, I whispered, though I didn't move. You should, she whispered back. Because if I stay, you'll what? Her challenge was soft, but it was a challenge. I looked at her mouth. I'll kiss you. Ava's fingers tightened around mine. Good, she said. I was hoping the sink wouldn't be my boldest move tonight. That was the last thread. I leaned in. The first kiss was careful, barely more than a question. My lips touched hers, And for one perfect second, neither of us moved. Then Ava made a quiet sound in the back of her throat and rose onto her toes, her hand sliding to my chest. That sound ruined my plan to be cautious. I kissed her again, slower this time, deeper, my hand at her jaw, hers gripping my shirt like she needed proof I was real. She tasted like coffee and nerves and something sweet I wanted far too much. When we broke apart, her forehead rested against mine. "So," she said, breathless. "Tomorrow." I smiled against her mouth. "Tomorrow. And you're still fixing nothing tonight?" "I'm off the clock." "Emotionally complicated repairman has boundaries. Noted." I laughed and kissed her once more, quick and helpless. Then I made myself step back because wanting her didn't mean rushing her. If anything, it meant the opposite. At the door, she handed me my toolbox like a hostess seeing off a perfectly normal guest, except her lips were swollen and my heart was trying to climb out of my chest. "Ava?" "Yeah? I'm really glad your sink wasn't broken." Her smile softened into something that nearly pulled me back inside. "Me too," she said. "But for the record, if tomorrow goes badly, I'm sabotaging the garbage disposal." Romantic. I'm learning from you. I spent all of Friday repairing a porch railing with the focus of a man defusing a bomb. Measure, cut, sand, check my phone, measure, drill. Pretend I wasn't smiling at nothing. Check my phone again. Ava had texted at 9:13. "For tonight, are we pretending to be normal people?" I wrote back, "I don't have that skill set." "Good. Pick me up at 7, emotionally complicated repairman." At 6:52, I was outside her building holding a small bouquet from the corner market and wondering if flowers were too much for a first date with the sister of my ex-girlfriend, whom I had kissed in a kitchen after inspecting a fake sink emergency. There wasn't a greeting card for that. Ava came down at 7:01 wearing a green dress under a black coat, her hair loose around her shoulders, and boots that made her look like trouble with dinner reservations. The second I saw her, my thoughts stopped forming complete sentences. She noticed. Of course she did. "Is something wrong?" she asked, walking toward me. "No." "You look concerned." "I'm reassessing my ability to operate a vehicle." Her smile bloomed slowly. "Because of my dress?" "Because of you." That did it. Her confidence faltered for half a second, and color rose in her cheeks. I handed her the flowers. She looked down at them like I'd given her something fragile and impossible. "You brought flowers." I panicked. "You panic beautifully." "They're not too much?" Ava lifted them to her face and breathed them in. "They're exactly enough." Exactly enough. I was in trouble. We went to a little Italian place tucked between a bookstore and a laundromat, the kind with candles on the tables and old brick walls that made everyone look like they belonged in a memory. I'd chosen it because it was public enough to keep me honorable and quiet enough to let us talk. Ava ordered gnocchi and a glass of red wine. I ordered lasagna and water because my brain already had enough hazards. She leaned across the small table after the waitress left. "So, first official date? Do we ask normal questions?" "Sure." "Favorite color? Childhood pet? Any unresolved feelings for my sister?" I choked on my water. Ava's eyes widened. "Too soon?" "Efficient," I coughed. "Like Natalie." She made a face. "Take that back." "Never." She laughed, and the sound settled something in me. "No," I said after a moment. "No unresolved feelings. Natalie is history. Good history mostly, but history." Ava traced the stem of her wineglass. "I know. I just needed to hear it without my sister narrating from the balcony." "Fair. And I don't want to compete with a ghost version of something that wasn't even right." "You won't." She looked at me then, more serious. "Promise?" I set my hand on the table, palm up. She looked at it for a second before placing her fingers in mine. "I promise," I said. "If I'm here with you, I'm here with you." Her thumb moved once against my knuckle, a tiny touch, completely devastating. "Okay," she said softly. Dinner stretched around us like a secret. We talked about her work restoring old book covers for a small bindery, which explained the paint I remembered on her cheek. She told me how she liked giving worn-out things a second life. That sounds suspiciously like a metaphor, I said. It's not my fault you're emotionally complicated. I'm beginning to regret telling you that phrase. You didn't tell me, I discovered it. I told her about my first repair job when I was 19 and installed a cabinet upside down in a client's laundry room. Ava nearly dropped her fork. Upside down? In my defense, it was a very judgmental cabinet. Did they notice? Immediately. And you still chose this career? I enjoy overcoming public shame. Her laugh lit the table. At some point, our knees touched beneath it. Neither of us moved away. By dessert, she had a bit of chocolate at the corner of her mouth, and I had the impossible task of not staring at it. I failed. What? She asked. You have... I gestured vaguely. She wiped the wrong side. Here? No. Here? Still no. Her eyes narrowed. Are you using dessert as an excuse to touch my face, Ethan? Maybe. Finally! I was beginning to worry I'd have to spill soup on myself. I reached across the table slower than necessary and brushed the chocolate away with my thumb. Her breath caught. So did mine. For a second, the restaurant disappeared. There was only her mouth, my hand, the flicker in her eyes that told me she remembered the kitchen as vividly as I did. Then my phone buzzed on the table. I ignored it. Ava glanced down automatically. Her expression shifted. What? I asked. She turned the screen slightly. A text from Natalie had popped up on my lock screen. If you two are being weird and noble, stop. If you're kissing, hydrate. Ava stared at it. I stared at it. Then she dissolved into laughter so sudden and bright that people at the next table looked over. I picked up my phone and typed, blocking you. Natalie replied instantly, coward. Ava was still laughing when I put the phone face down. I can't believe my sister is third-wheeling via emergency alerts, she said. She means well. She means loudly. She loves you. That softened her. She looked down at her plate, smile fading into something tender. Yeah, she does. That's the part that makes this feel possible. I reached for her hand again. This time she gave it to me without hesitation. Outside after dinner, the rain had stopped, leaving the sidewalk shining under the streetlights. We walked without a plan, her hand tucked into the crook of my arm like she'd done it 100 times. Every few steps, her shoulder brushed mine. It felt dangerously easy. At a crosswalk, she looked up at me. Can I confess something that may ruin my mystique? You have mystique. She elbowed me. Rude. Confess. I almost canceled tonight. My smile faded. Why? Because I was scared it would feel wrong. She looked across the street, not at me. Or worse, that it would feel right and you'd decide you couldn't handle it. The light changed, but neither of us moved. I turned toward her. Ava. She forced a small smile. I'm not trying to make you promise the future on date one. I've liked the idea of you for a long time. Tonight I realized I like the actual you more. That's inconvenient. My chest tightened. I almost canceled too, I admitted. Her eyes snapped to mine. Not because I didn't want this, I said. Because I wanted it too much to be casual, and that scared me. The city moved around us. Cars hissed through wet streets. Somewhere behind us, a couple argued about directions, but Ava was looking at me like I'd handed her something more intimate than flowers. What did you decide? She asked. I stepped closer. That fear is a terrible reason to miss dinner with you. Her smile trembled. Good answer. Also, the gnocchi got excellent reviews. There he is, romance and carbohydrates. I contain multitudes. She reached up and straightened the collar of my jacket, though it didn't need straightening. Her fingers lingered at my throat. Ethan, she said quietly. Yeah, I want you to kiss me again. I didn't ask if she was sure. Not because it didn't matter, but because her eyes had already answered, and her hand was already curled in my jacket like she was choosing me back. I bent my head. This kiss was nothing like the first one. There was no careful question in it. This one knew. Her mouth opened under mine, warm and certain, and I slid my hand to her waist, pulling her closer while the walk signal counted down beside us. Someone honked. Ava laughed against my lips. "We are blocking pedestrians," she whispered. "Let them find love and understand." She kissed me once more, quick and pleased, then tugged me across the street. By the time I brought her home, neither of us wanted the night to end. We stood under the awning outside her building, close enough that the toes of her boots touched mine. "Do you want to come up?" she asked. The question landed soft but serious. I did. God, I did. So I brushed my thumb over her knuckles and told the truth. "Yes, but not tonight." Her face changed. I added quickly, "Not because I don't want you." "I know," she said, studying me. "Because I do, a lot. And I want our first date to stay a first date, not become something we rushed because we've been holding our breath for 2 years." Ava was quiet for one beat. Then she stepped into me, wrapped her arms around my waist, and rested her cheek against my chest. The trust in it hit harder than any kiss. I held her close, my chin brushing her hair. "Look at you," she murmured. "Being careful because it matters." I smiled into the dark. Annoying, isn't it? Extremely. She tilted her face up. "Kiss me good night before I respect you too much." So I did. Slow, sweet, lingering. When she finally went inside, she looked back once through the glass door, flowers in one hand, cheeks pink from my mouth. My phone buzzed before I reached my truck. "Ava, for the record, the date went well." "Me? Good." "I was worried about the cabinet story." "Ava, it was brave of you to confess your criminal past." "Me? Dinner again Sunday?" "Ava, yes. But Saturday, I may develop a suspicious shelf problem." I stood in the wet streetlight, grinning like an idiot. "Me? I'll bring a level." "Ava, bring flowers too. You panic beautifully." Saturday morning, Ava sent me a photo of a perfectly level shelf. "Ava, tragic news. It refuses to malfunction." Me. "Have you tried insulting it?" "Ava, I called it emotionally available. Nothing." Me. "Serious defect." "Ava, you should come verify." So I did. Not because of the shelf. I think we had both abandoned the pretense that household repair was involved in whatever kept pulling me to her door. She answered wearing jeans, a white t-shirt, and a streak of blue paint along her wrist. Her hair was twisted up with a pencil, and the sight of her like that, unguarded, bright-eyed, pleased to see me, hit me harder than the green dress had. "You're staring," she said. "I'm inspecting the premises." Professional opinion? Dangerous. Her smile turned slow. "The shelf?" "You." I had brought flowers again. Sunflowers this time, because the market had them by the door and they looked like her laugh. Ava took them without teasing me. She just pressed her face into them, then stepped forward and kissed me like she'd been thinking about it since the night before. I dropped my toolbox. It hit the floor with a metallic crash. She jumped, then burst out laughing against my mouth. "Smooth," she said. "I was ambushed. You knocked on my door. I didn't know you'd answer like that." How was I supposed to answer? With a permit application, a safety briefing. She slid her arms around my neck. "I'll do better next time." Then she kissed me again and I forgot every joke I'd ever learned. We spent the afternoon pretending to fix things. I tightened a cabinet handle that didn't need tightening. She made coffee we didn't drink until it was cold. At some point, I ended up sitting on her kitchen floor with my back against the cupboards, while she sat across from me, legs stretched out, our socked feet touching in the middle. It should have felt ridiculous. It felt like my favorite place in the city. Ava told me about her father leaving when she and Natalie were teenagers, how her sister had become part shield, part storm. I told her about my mother cleaning offices at night after my dad got sick, and how fixing things had started as necessity before becoming a trade. "I think that's why I like it," I said, turning my mug between my hands. "When something's broken, there's usually an honest reason. Pressure, age, bad installation. You find the reason, you fix it." Ava watched me over her coffee. "People aren't sinks, Ethan." "No," I said. "They're worse. They lie about where the leak is." She smiled, but her eyes were soft. "Is that what you did with Natalie?" The question was gentle. Still, it found the bruise. I looked at our feet touching. I think so. We were both trying to be the people we'd promised on the first few dates. Neither of us wanted to admit we'd changed shape. And with me? With you, I'm trying not to make promises I haven't earned yet. I lifted my eyes to hers. But I want to earn them. Ava went quiet. Then she crawled across the kitchen floor toward me. There was nothing graceful about it. One knee bumped my toolbox. Her pencil fell out of her hair. But she came straight into my space, straddled my thighs, and cupped my face in both hands. "Hi," she whispered. My hand settled carefully at her waist. "Hi." That was a very good answer. I hoped. "I'm going to kiss you now. I support this plan." She smiled, then kissed me slowly, deeply, like she was sealing my words somewhere under her ribs. I held her closer, feeling the warm weight of her, the brush of her hair against my jaw, the way her body fit against mine with terrifying ease. When she pulled back, her forehead rested on mine. "I don't need perfect," she said. "I need honest." "You'll get honest? Even when it's awkward?" "Especially then." Her thumb brushed my cheek. "Okay." My phone rang. I closed my eyes. "If that's Natalie, I'm throwing it into the sink." Ava leaned back and glanced at the screen. Her expression changed. "It's my mother." That was new. Ava took the call on speaker, maybe because she didn't want secrets between us, maybe because her hands were still resting on my shoulders. "Hi, Mom." "Ava Rose Whitaker," her mother said. "Please tell me you are not dating Natalie's ex-boyfriend." Ava winced. I stiffened beneath her. "So," Ava said carefully. "Funny story. There is nothing funny about this. Your aunt saw you kissing someone outside your building last night, and apparently Portland has become a surveillance state." Ava's eyes flicked to mine. "Mom, your sister says she's fine." "Of course she says she's fine. Natalie would say she's fine if a meteor landed in her soup. But this looks terrible." There it was. The thing I'd expected. The shadow at the edge of every good moment. Ava moved off my lap and I hated the sudden space. "I'm not doing this because it looks good," she said. Her voice shook, but she didn't back down. "I'm doing it because Ethan matters to me." Her mother went quiet. Ava looked at me then, and whatever panic I'd felt loosened. She had said it out loud. Not to me in a candlelit restaurant, not in a kiss. To the person whose opinion could hurt her. I reached for her hand. She took it immediately. Mrs. Whitaker sighed. "Honey, I just don't want you hurt." "I know," Ava said, "but I'm allowed to choose the risk." I lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles. Her eyes flashed with something tender and fierce. Her mother softened a little. "Is he there?" Ava looked at me. I nodded. "Yes," she said. A pause. "Put him on." I cleared my throat. "Hello, Mrs. Whitaker." "Don't hello me like you're here to fix the gutters." "Fair. Are you playing with my daughter's heart?" "No, ma'am." "Do you know how complicated this is?" "Yes." "And?" I looked at Ava. Her hand was warm in mine, her eyes worried but trusting. "And I'm not choosing simple," I said. "I'm choosing Ava." Ava's lips parted. The line went silent long enough for me to hear rain starting up against the window. Finally, her mother said, "Well, that was annoyingly decent." Ava let out a watery laugh. Genetic, apparently. I'm still reserving judgment. I'd expect nothing less. "Bring him to dinner tomorrow." Ava froze. I froze. "Mom, if this is real, he can survive pot roast and questions." I said. "I like pot roast." Ava covered her face. "Good," Mrs. Whitaker said. 6 o'clock. The call ended. For a second, neither of us moved. Then Ava dropped her head onto my shoulder and groaned. "I'm sorry." I wrapped both arms around her. "For the pot roast?" "For my entire bloodline. I like them. You have met one of them over the phone and dated another unsuccessfully. Still optimistic." She lifted her head. "You meant what you said? That I like pot roast?" She gave me a look. I brushed a stray piece of hair from her cheek. "Yes, I'm choosing you." The worry in her face cracked open into something beautiful. "Say it again," she whispered. "I'm choosing you, Ava." She kissed me then, not playful, not teasing. This one was full of relief. Her arms went around me tight and I held her like I could answer every doubt with the press of my mouth. Later, we stood at her sink washing the mugs together. The sink still worked perfectly. She washed, I dried. Our hips bumped. Her sunflower bouquet sat on the counter, bright as a dare. "We have family dinner tomorrow," she said. "We do. And Natalie will be there. Probably. And my mother may interrogate you about your intentions." "I have intentions." Ava's head snapped toward me. I grinned. "Respectable ones." "Coward." I leaned down and kissed the blue paint mark on her wrist. "Mostly respectable." Her breath caught and she tried to hide it by splashing soap at me. I laughed and she laughed too, and for a while the world shrank back down to warm water, wet hands, and the simple joy of standing beside her. But when I left that evening, Ava walked me to the door and held onto my jacket a second longer than usual. "What if tomorrow is awful?" she asked. I cupped her face. "Then we leave, get burgers, and you can tell me I was brave. And if it goes well, then we still get burgers. I'm not wasting a plan." She smiled. "Kiss me goodnight." I did. And before she closed the door, she whispered, "I'm choosing you too." Sunday at 5:47, I sat in my truck outside the Whitaker house holding a bottle of wine, a grocery store bouquet for Ava's mother, and the full weight of my questionable life choices. Ava sat beside me, looking unfairly beautiful in a rust-colored sweater and black skirt, twisting one ring around her finger. "You okay?" I asked. "No, you?" "Absolutely not." "Good. I hate suffering alone." I reached across the console and took her hand. "We don't have to do this tonight." She looked at me, and her expression softened. "Yes, we do." "Because your mother summoned us?" "Because I'm tired of acting like loving someone is only valid if it's convenient." The word hit me square in the chest. Loving. She heard it too. Her eyes widened slightly, but she didn't take it back. I lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles. "Then let's go be inconvenient." She smiled. "That may be the most romantic thing you've ever said." "Wait until I compliment the pot roast." Inside, Mrs. Whitaker hugged Ava first, then looked at me for a long moment like she was deciding whether I was a man or a plumbing problem. "Ethan," she said. "Mrs. Whitaker." She took the flowers. "These are pretty." I panicked. From the living room, Natalie called, "He does that beautifully." Ava groaned. "I'm leaving." But she didn't. She slipped her fingers through mine and held on. Natalie appeared in the doorway with 2 glasses of wine and a grin sharp enough to cut glass. Seeing her was strange for exactly 3 seconds. Then she looked at our joined hands, looked at my face, and smiled in a way that was not sad at all. "Well," she said, handing Ava a glass, "you both survived the driveway." "Barely," Ava said. Natalie handed me the other glass. "For courage." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet." Mom made seating assignments. Dinner was exactly the kind of trial Ava had feared and I had expected. Mrs. Whitaker asked how business was. Her aunt, the surveillance specialist, asked if I'd always had an eye for Ava, which made Ava choke on water and me reconsider the witness protection program. Natalie kicked my foot under the table when I got too formal. But every time the room tilted awkwardly, Ava reached for me, her hand on my knee under the table, her shoulder brushing mine when she leaned in to pass the rolls. Her quiet, "You're doing fine," whispered when her mother asked what my intentions were with the calm focus of a judge about to sentence me. I set down my fork. "My intention," I said, "is to take this seriously, to not rush her, not hide her, and not make her carry the complicated parts alone." Ava went very still beside me. Natalie stopped smiling. Mrs. Whitaker studied me. "And if people talk?" Ava answered before I could. "Let them," she said. "I know what this is." Her voice didn't shake. I turned to her, forgetting everyone else at the table. "What is it?" Her cheeks colored, but she didn't look away. "It's mine," she said softly. "My choice, my risk, my happiness." I couldn't kiss her there, not with pot roast between us and her aunt watching like a hawk. But I wanted to. God, I wanted to. So I took her hand on top of the table where everyone could see. Mrs. Whitaker exhaled. Well, at least you're both stubborn. Natalie lifted her glass. To terrible ideas that are secretly excellent. Ava laughed, and just like that, the room eased. After dinner, while Natalie helped her mother in the kitchen, Ava pulled me out onto the back porch. The night was cold and clear, the yard silvered by moonlight. She wrapped her arms around herself. So? So your family is terrifying. Yes. And the pot roast was excellent. Coward. And I'm still here. Her teasing faded. She stepped closer. You are. I touched her waist. Ava, about what you said in the truck. Her gaze flicked up to mine. Loving someone, I said. She swallowed. I didn't mean to say it like that. Did you mean it? The porch light caught the gold in her eyes. For a moment she looked scared, but she stayed. Yes, she whispered. Not in a demanding way. Not in a you have to say it back way. Just, yes, I think I started falling for you before I had any right to, and now that you're here, I don't want to pretend I'm casual. The honesty of her undid me. I cupped her face in both hands. I'm in love with you too. Her breath broke. I smiled a little. Also not casually. She laughed through the shine in her eyes, and then she kissed me. It was cold on that porch, but her mouth was warm, her hands gripping my coat, her body pressing into mine like she had finally found the place she'd been walking toward. I kissed her slowly, in full view of the kitchen window, no hiding, no apology. Behind the glass, Natalie whooped. Ava pulled back, mortified and laughing. I'm changing my name. I'll learn the new one. She rested her forehead against my chest. Stay tonight? I stilled. She looked up quickly. Not like that. I mean, after we leave. Come to my apartment. Watch a movie, fall asleep on the couch if we want. I'm not ready for the night to end. I brushed my thumb over her cheek. Then I'll stay. And I did. We went back to her place, kicked off our shoes, and watched half of an old black and white movie neither of us could follow. She fell asleep tucked against my side, one hand curled over my heart, and I sat there in the glow of her living room lamp feeling like my whole life had shifted by inches until somehow it pointed home. By the following spring, her sink was still not broken. Her garbage disposal did jam once, but she admitted she'd done it by accident and looked disappointed that she hadn't thought to weaponize it sooner. My spare toothbrush migrated to her bathroom. Her books took over the passenger seat of my truck. Natalie started inviting us both to brunch and only made it weird when she was bored. Mrs. Whitaker still watched me closely, but she saved me extra potatoes. 6 months after the fake emergency, Ava moved into a little blue house with me on the east side. The kind with creaky floors, bad windows, and endless projects. She said it was perfect because I needed things to fix and she needed proof I could live with imperfection. On our first night there, surrounded by boxes, we ate takeout on the kitchen floor. Ava wore my sweatshirt, her hair piled messily on top of her head, and she looked around at the cracked tile, the dripping faucet, the crooked cabinet doors. This place is a disaster, she said happily. I leaned over and kissed the corner of her mouth. You lured me in with a working sink. I should have known. She smiled, soft and wicked. Stay, she whispered, echoing the night that started everything. I've been waiting for an excuse. Only this time there was no guilt. No line we were afraid to cross, just Ava's hand in mine, a house full of broken things, and the woman I loved asking me to stay in a life we were building together. So I stayed. What would you have done if your ex's sister asked you to fix her sink, then admitted she only wanted an excuse to see you? Have you ever experienced something similar where love showed up in the most complicated way possible? Tell me your story in the comments. And for those who'd like to be a little closer to us, we've opened memberships where you'll get shorter exclusive stories every week with no ads. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.